Cool. So, John, are we talking about your
Yes.
incredible pick?
I had not watched this in so long that it was like a lot of jokes that I think there's like two or three of them that I've watched more than others of this 6 episode run that we're talking about today
Yes,
of Garth Marenghi's Darkplace. And so watching all 6 of them again, it was fun seeing the jokes that I had sort of forgotten and the episodes I had sort of forgotten alongside the first one in particular that I've showed to so many people over the years that has almost become like a short film that I've used to kind
yeah.
of just say to somebody, look at this
Oh,
thing.
cool. Yeah.
But it's that British comedy thing. We talked about this when I picked it, of just
Right.
it's like such a specific concept, and it's so fully realized to its potential, and it only exists for these 6 episodes.
Yeah.
And it just, like, I mean, for what it's trying to do, I mean, you can't really say it doesn't knock the ball out of the park because there's really nothing else quite like it. But I love all the little details it gets right. And if folks don't know, it's a show that it pretends to be hosted by this kind of pompous horror author
Yeah.
who
For
fancies
sure.
himself a bit of a celebrity, and
Yeah.
this is a show in the 80s that he produced and wrote and directed and starred in, that kind of is alongside his fiction. And what we're seeing is a modern, as of 2004 when this show came out, we're seeing a modern like he's pulling out of the vaults these episodes of this show that it sounds like never aired at all. Like he's a little dodgy on it. I think he said it aired in Peru briefly. But it's like it's totally a show that he produced 6 episodes of and then got put in his vault. And of course, he's a fictional character played by the comedian and actor Matthew Holness. And he has a real specific energy, and I definitely want to talk about what that energy is as we get into this. But and then what you're seeing is an episode of his show from the 80s, but he's spliced it in with, again, he's claiming like modern interview footage. And I love that each time there's a slightly different explanation of the interview footage. And one time he said that someone's included because they were there at the time of the creation and they haven't died or offended him. But it's like he's doing a little bit of meta commentary on sort of documentary or reality, or almost like DVD commentaries. It's almost like that's what it seems to
Yeah.
be riffing on, is the sort of
Yeah.
pompous self-reflection of artists of every type in this modern era, or at least at the time 2004 was probably part of that peak era of commentary tracks, and physical media was still the thing back then. So I mean, it parodies so many things and it's got so many layers to it. Like it's almost got like a 3-layer intro. Every episode starts with him at his desk reading a snatch of his really terrible prose, and then he gets up and does the same series of shots through his house as he gives a little introduction to the episode. Then you get the introduction to the episode, which has sort of a combination Twilight Zone into a parody of an 80s television show opening. Then you get the episode, which then has its own little title card that comes up. So there's like many
Yeah.
layers to the onion of parody in this thing. And I don't know, I think it's so sophisticated, and yet some of the jokes are such silly slapstick humor. It's just an interesting thing. It's totally British in that way, that it matches the like brainy with the low just perfectly. What did you think, Steve? This was your first time watching it, right?
Yeah, I'd never even honestly heard of it. But yeah, this is the first time watching it. I mean, and honestly, I don't know that it fully. I don't know that I fully was enjoying it from beginning to end. But I mean, I definitely found myself laughing quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I almost felt like maybe what wore on me pretty quickly was just like, I don't know, like I was having trouble placing it. Like I found it to be pretty funny, but I almost feel like the like how overtly like bad it was, how overtly bad it was, like almost seemed like it was like too on the nose, or like it was too obviously intending to be so bad. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like
Well,
it
they don't miss
was
a beat. They don't miss a beat as far as how to make it bad. But I think
right,
that
like
falls under like super low
every
budget,
single thing.
self-produced thing,
Yes.
But I agree with you that like there's no missing it. There's nothing subtle about the way that it
Yeah.
is a piece of bad art. But I think the fact that they don't miss any opportunity with like eye lines that don't line up and characters that can't
Like
remember
this
lines,
cuts that don't like, yeah, wearing different like the clothes is being like worn differently from one cut to the next. Like, yeah, I mean that stuff is, I think I found it a lot funnier in the first couple episodes, but I think by the third or fourth one I was like, this is, I don't know, this is like totally my thing. That said, again, I did laugh a lot, and I do love Matt Berry And I just feel like every moment that he's there, and even like Richard Ayoade, like I love him as well. Maybe I'm just more aware of the two of them from other stuff that I've seen. But I mean, those were the two that really stood out to me. I don't know. The absurdity of it was really fun too. But I don't know. It was something that I thought maybe I was gonna like more from like just maybe what you guys had talked about, and I feel like a couple other people had mentioned it over time, but I had just completely forgotten about it, mainly because of Matt Berry. But yeah, I don't know. It was fun to watch, but thankfully, it's like short episodes. It's not like some huge commitment, but just wasn't exactly what I was thinking it was going to be.
And do you think having to watch all 6 episodes in a spell as opposed to like watching it over time, do you think that maybe made it wear more on you, or do you see, because I do think there is something about, I mean, I love it, and even I think marathoning it is like, it's a little bit samey, and that's not to me like a knock against the quality of it, but it's like it's hard to get the same if you're watching all 6 of these in a run. Then it's like it's hard to get the same interest level going into the 4th or the 5th as you had watching the 1st or the 2nd. But I think that some of the jokes are so funny that like they do make you kind of wake up and go, oh yeah, this isn't just the same thing over and over again. They are doing something. This is evolving a little bit as it goes along.
Right.
But it is sort of like my thing about showing the first episode to people. You kind of get it after the first episode, and that again, that can be taken as a knock against many shows if you're going to see it that way. But it's also, to me, it's like, does this establish a formula that you could have some permutations of? And I think 6 episodes is about right, as far as sticking to that formula. Well, Ronald, you had expressed that you loved this when I brought it up before, so talk a little bit about maybe the things, like how did it cross your path the first time, and what did you feel watching it again?
Matt Berry, the IT Crowd I was a huge fan of that show, and I just kind of fell down a rabbit hole with like seeing that he was a musician. And this is one of the shows that I saw, and it was kind of hit me hard, like maybe because I watch a ton of I'll give you an example. I did a movie stream of B-side Marvel movies the other day. So I had Doctor Strange from 1978 and Spider-Man, the Japanese one, and the tone of that stuff is so similar to this. The seriousness that people have for these performances is just you wanna take it seriously, but like it's so rooted in silliness that delivering a line like blood, you're just saying blood all over and over and over again. It's just and the musical numbers that came in the middle of the show, like it's so random. It's let me tell you why this is interesting to me, because I just started watching History of the World and I didn't laugh once. And then I watched this and I laughed a ton, and I was like, what is it about the difference between the humor that didn't hit me at all for History of the World, because I love his stuff, and this, and I
well, plus
I
everyone
think
in the world that we love today in comedy practically is in History of the World.
Yes, and I didn't laugh
it's like
once.
but it's like I kind of thought I wouldn't. I saw the trailers and I thought that looks fun, and then I saw so much about it, and I've watched interviews with people talking about it, and I've enjoyed I listened to Nick Kroll and Ike Barinholtz promoting it, and I liked that. But I realized it still doesn't make me want to watch like a warmed over Mel Brooks thing. It's like that's not the promise. Like Nikki has even said, should we watch that? That looks funny. Should we watch that? And each time I've been like, I don't know. Like I just don't. I'm just not expecting anything from it. So I've been kind of waiting to see if people thought it was really funny.
I feel so bad like leveraging that, but I'm just saying.
No, I know what you're saying though. It's a good comparison. It's a good comparison because this is absurd and silly like that.
Yeah. So, but I also get what Steve is talking about. Like, there's a thing. Like, I'm a yes and person about stuff, right? There's like a thing that my friends have that's like if I don't get this shit in 20 minutes, fuck you for showing me this. Not Steve, but I'm saying like my friend, like other friends have it. Like, and Steve is one of the more liberal. He'll give it a chance. And my other friends are like, this is trash. You're a piece of shit. How could you do this to me?
How could you make me watch
ruined
that?
my life? Yeah, it's just like and so I do say to you, Steve, thank you for even trying, because I've shown this to people and I've gotten my feelings hurt because of how poorly people reacted to it. So the fact that you're just like, this wasn't for me, is better than
well, it's so fully doing what it's doing. You know, it's so fully like
it commits to it.
That right, and that's either going to be the thing that makes you totally click into it, or it's going to be a thing that kind of to what you're saying. I guess a combination of what you're saying and what Steve was saying would be like, if you're not fully clicking into it, then it's not going to be the thing that you need to see 6 episodes of necessarily. But if you do fully click into it, it's like each episode does have like 20 new little nuanced things that are slightly different than other versions of the same thing. Matt Berry's performance is notable for how like exquisitely awkward it is the entire time. Every line reading is like the wrong syllable, you know, and just even playing to the camera in a funny way. And I think that what's her name who plays I think the actress's name is, I'm gonna get it right, Alice Lowe, who plays Madeline Wool, who's the actress that plays Dr. Liz Asher. I mean, this is like the layers upon layers. You have the actors who play the actors who play the characters. She's perfect for that sort of British. If you've seen that kind of British 70s, 80s thing, she is pitch perfect. Like every little line reading of hers is so like just the sound of her voice, everything of that type of like spunky heroine that would have popped up in those days and would have been, you know, in a very misogynist time, would have been presented like a spunky heroine, but still would have had the sort of, maybe not quite the sexism that her character experiences on the show, but that's just a few degrees removed from what was actually going on in the time of entertainment as far as the way women were depicted.
She was working there for hair and makeup, which was,
well, no, it's what he said. It's like he said,
he said, but I'm just saying, like
for makeup and clothes,
makeup and clothes. Like
when Matt Berry meets her and is like, "You're a woman," he just says it. But no, I think that like the parody of it, and to me, it's got the silliness, and I also like the layer of each episode does have a slightly worked out horror story. I mean, even though it's totally wonky, it's like there is a real story going on there. And I love the way they wedge in certain things that just always happen, such as Dean Lerner firing a shotgun, like just kind of randomly, not really, you know, especially in the first episode, he's not really shooting in the right angle or in the right direction. That's to Steve's point of just how impossibly bad is this thing. But I do think that like the awkward assemblage of the footage sometimes is just like so artfully, it's just madness. It's like if you've seen a cheaply made movie that someone showed you, sometimes it's that kind of thing. People work with what they've got, and there's a lot of like, just pretend we got that on film and that you saw that, because you know this what we did capture doesn't really convey any kind of reality. I also like seeing the cameos from people like Stephen Merchant and Julian Barrett, and you know, people that pop up that you might know from other things. It does seem like in that sense it's a little snapshot of maybe this group of comedians that were working together. And you mentioned Richard Ayoade, Steve. Some of his moments are just hilarious. I mean, he's got like a way of delivering a line that is just like got this lyrical kind of sing-songy quality to it, but it's just perfect. But let's talk about Garth Marenghi before we move on completely. Like, what do you say about the energy of that guy? I feel like the fact that he's like a sort of seems like he's got like a Napoleon complex, like he's a little guy and he's wearing the leather jacket and like smoking, looking off into the distance, and knowing that this was created as a vanity project. I really think that nails. I know that guy. I've met that guy in so many fields of creative endeavor that I've been involved in. I've met these guys who are sort of like, they have their own kind of energy. It's not quite Tommy Wiseau, but they have this quality of pushing projects forward and getting things done. And it's like, it's pure ego that drives what they do. And I just think I don't know. I think he nails that as the character and as the guy we see in the wraparounds.
Yeah. So that person could be Garth Marenghi, or it can also be Quentin Tarantino. So that's you know what I mean? Like it's like that path could be the worst thing ever or the best thing ever. And those obsessions, those pockets of obsession and ego and all that stuff, you know, you feel it. You've seen a million versions of these, especially when you're in creative spaces. So
well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. What were you about to say, Ronald?
No, that was it.
Oh, I just wanted to mention a couple of the things that we were talking about. Like, I love the awkward zoom ins on the model, on the miniature of the hospital. That where the camera always has to kind of find where it's going just a little bit. I
Yeah.
thought that was a really funny touch. I love the funny use of slow motion, and then they explain in one episode that they
The-
were
the
running
short on
up
time.
to 8 minutes short, and so they used anytime there wasn't dialogue, they used slow motion to try to pad the show out. And after that, it really does become so much more pronounced that like there'll be entire moments that are just like running down the
Yeah.
hallway or whatever. And I just there's one little quote that I thought was really funny that kind of sums up the tone of the character when he's talking about the episode and he's hyping it. I believe it's the one about the Scottish ghosts or whatever those are. And he says, and here it is, uncut, uncensored, unbelievable, and unpalatable.
Yeah,
But I thought that kind of sums up the show in a certain sort of way. Like, it is definitely like this one man's vision. And I guess maybe that's why I believe it, as far as silly as it gets. I believe it as the production of this totally egotistical mind. Because I mean, we've seen these self-made movies by these people who fashion themselves as like the cool guy. We've seen that in a few cases, and it usually is like outsider art. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a little bit naive, to your point, Steve, of like, how could it be this bad without being deliberately bad? It's like, it is possible. Right. People make some pretty wretched things in the name of like their vision. But yeah, I think people, it's either totally up your alley or maybe you'll be a little lukewarm on it. But I really enjoyed watching it. And Nikki came through and saw me watching a little bit of it. And I think the Matt Berry factor pulled her in. So I bet modern viewers will find that to be one of the more interesting things about it, just because he's kind of having a moment due to Laszlo.
So good.
All right, so whose turn is it now? Who picks our next required viewing?
Is it me?
I think it's me.
It's you?
I think isn't it?
What was the last thing you did?
The last thing we did was The Dry, actually, wasn't it? So that was Steve.
Oh, yeah.
That's Ronald then. Okay, that's right.